Howdy, folks. Happy Black Friday, as you call it. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure everybody is out there like a bunch of psychotics gobbling up things at 50% off at your local stores for the beginning of the Christmas shopping. Although I found that people are doing it even before Black Friday. It's sort of nuts. And Russ, traditionally, I'm one of those people who just avoids it, because I can wait till December 4th to buy something and not have to buy it the day after Thanksgiving. But I wanted to get a new desktop computer, and there's a Best Buy about 2 minutes from where I live. So I decided yesterday, once someone was over at the house to watch the turkey that I'd been cooking for 6 hours, to just keep an eye on it, and I could go over to Best Buy. And I go over there, and there's a line of about 200 people, and I expected that's ridiculous. But they had an ad in the Thanksgiving paper in the Buffalo News, one of the inserts, and I was looking through it, and there was the computer that I was looking for. I'm like, okay, reasonable price, I can get it. Blah blah blah. Guys, there's a guy walking down the line with like little tickets. It was almost like it used to be when I used to get concert tickets in the 80s.
Yeah, when you got a wristband when you're waiting.
Exactly. Here's your number, and if we've run out of it, then you're not going to get it. So I'm like, well, I'm interested in this desktop, and he's like, oh, that was recalled. I'm like, wait a second, it was in your ad today. Oh yeah, we know it was a mistake at corporate. It was recalled. I was there for 5 minutes. I mean, that was the only good thing. It's like it was 10 degrees outside. There was no wind. I was freezing my what's off. And if this guy hadn't come along and I didn't ask about the desktop, I would have been waiting for an hour.
Right.
And there wouldn't have been a computer there. So they are lucky that I wouldn't have gone on a killing spree based on the fact that
no, he's kidding, folks.
I'm kidding.
Sometimes, Mike, I wonder.
Oh, stop. well, it was after a day with my family, folks. So that
he was exactly on the verge of murder.
Honestly, I
don't want to call that bait and switch, but it's really close.
I don't know how. Honestly, there are some families that get along, and holidays and stuff like that are phenomenal. They're great. It's a joyous time. You have a great time with your kids and your relatives, and I love my family dearly, but they drive me insane because we're all the same. And after being in a room with them for 3 hours, I want to sort of bash my head against the wall.
Everybody's talking about the Leafs for 3 hours. Is that why it
got No. I wish it was that. I could stand that because I do that every day. But no, it's just, oh my God. No, it's
I'll tell you the secret. You want to know the secret? The secret is, like, at my gathering, we literally had 5 people. Perfect.
Okay.
And yesterday for us, we were at my parents' place in Jersey, so my parents insisted on hosting, and it's fun. It's maybe, I'd say probably we're in the teens in terms of the numbers of people that are there. Between my kids and my wife and my brother and his wife and their 2 kids. My aunt comes over, so it ends up being around like 12, 13 people altogether.
Well, and then we'll get started with the hockey. It was actually okay back in the day, where I would go over to my brother's house, and his wife's family was part of the whole mix, and there was more people there, and it sort of diffused. It was like, you could hang out with your own little group, but you could also like go and talk to other people, and it was like, but now it's just a smaller group, and like I said, I love them dearly, but we get on each other's nerves, and it wasn't as bad as in previous years, folks, but it was just anyway. Hello, hockey world. Today is Friday, November 23rd, 2018.
Here's a little segue for you. Thanks, Michael. I'm Anthony Majoni from Sunrise Philly Magazine.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
And I'm Happy Michael Agello, and this is the Hockey Buzzcast here on HockeyBuzz.com. Well, folks, I've seen different percentages, so I don't know what it is, but I think it's around 80 that where teams that are in playoff spots right now are will hold on to those playoff spots for the rest of the year and make the playoffs, obviously. So we'll talk about that in a minute, but I just want to start with a a minor trade that was made on Thanksgiving Day, surprisingly, between two Canadian teams. So it wasn't Thanksgiving Day for them. Excuse me. Where Chris Weidman, defenseman for Ottawa, was traded to the Edmonton Oilers for a conditional 2026 round draft pick, which I thought was a little bit low for a return for a workable top six guy. But Russ, this just points out that's something that we have continued to bang away about the Edmonton Oilers. The Edmonton Oilers defense is terrible. And, they added former Tampa Bay Jason Garrison, and he played for them for a little while. That was, I guess, an indication of how bad their defense was, because we saw from Tampa Bay last year that he wasn't that good anymore. And they bring in Hitchcock, and for one of the first things that they do is they bring in Chris Weidman.
Well, this is just like a hitch move saying, look, you got Benning in there. He's not quite ready to be an NHL defenseman. So you got Chiarelli appeasing him and getting what he could. And
right.
So now the American twist on this is Chris Weidman is American. So he was just sitting down to his Thanksgiving dinner and then got notified of the trade. Now, most people would be unhappy getting dealt on Thanksgiving like that. He was happy. So that just tells you the state of affairs in Ottawa, that he was not mad that he was traded on Thanksgiving.
Well, Anthony, it's sort of like being thrown from the frying pan into the fire, because I mean the expectations in Ottawa, and they played better than most people thought that they would early on, but I think they've settled into where most people thought they were going to be this year. Edmonton, they're a tire fire. They've fired their coach. They had lost 6 of 7 until they hired Hitchcock. Mm-hmm. Hitchcock wins his first game in San Jose earlier this week. There's going to be changes. They're going to be changing the structure of the team, changing the way that they approach the game, and hopefully straighten things out, and behind McDavid, have a chance to make the playoffs. But Weidman's going into a situation where he probably will get playing time, but it's going to be a hodgepodge. It's really going to be a situation where there's going to be a lot of change and a lot of Hitchcock pushing buttons.
Yeah, exactly. They're trying to find the proper combination to see who can obviously shift and play in Hitch's system, and that goes also for the forwards too. It's got to be he's going to be trying to instill, that mindset. And we've all watched the Oilers and seen how they play. The gaps defensively, or prior to McClellan's firing, were extremely noticeable. That's the one thing I anticipate will be tightening up. The Weidman deal, I think it's a kind of a decent situation for Edmonton because of the fact that, as you stated, they got him at a pretty low cost at this point of the year for a 6th-round pick. And if things don't quite go according to plan, I think they probably end up with a better return close to the deadline. Maybe not massively better, but you know how it is when we get closer to the deadline. Teams are willing to pay a little bit, pony up a little bit more. Mm-hmm. Maybe they end up, getting a higher pick if, in fact, again, they're not going to hold on to it.
This is a 6th in 2020. That's how little this pick.
Yeah. Exactly. But the weird thing,
conditional
return for a pick, let's say next year,
a conditional 6
plus for them. So
yeah, it's a conditional 6. So that means it's probably a 7th unless he plays a certain amount of games. So
there's a possibility of that, I think, with Hitch. I do. I think, because Edmonton's defense, I'm looking at right now, looking at their current blue line situation, they're top, you got Klefbom, Larson, Nurse, Russell. Once you get to the bottom pair there, if you're pairing between Gravel, Benning, and Weidman, at least in that circumstance, you could swap one guy in or out, depending on who the opponent is.
Well, the one thing that's curious here, and again, I know Chris White, he's not like a top 4 defenseman, so
he's making $1 million. That's $1 million off the
he's only making $1 million. He's a UFA, and Pierre Dorian trades him in November rather than wait till closer to February when teams. How much did Chicago get for Michael Kempny? I think they got a 3rd-round pick. You probably could have gotten a higher pick. Unless this means that they want to move up somebody from their organization, somebody from
the off season, right?
What's that?
Kempney trade was off season, right?
No, it was before the deadline because he went from Chicago to Washington.
I remember that. I was thinking,
right, and then
about when he went to the Capitals. I'm sorry.
Right, yeah, and I'm just saying it's like usually teams will, for UFA defensemen, since there's so few of them, they will wait to the last minute to maximize their return. And he's not a bad defenseman. He's probably somebody who would fit in on a bottom pairing for a team that could use depth. Or even a 7-8. I mean, but it's like they'd be willing to pay a little more, and he trades him for a 6th round pick, a conditional 6th in 2020. It just doesn't seem like a good return.
I mean, if you're looking at Ottawa's blue line as of right now, if you're subtracting, so let's take a look here. Just bring it up on the screen. So with Ottawa's blue line as it stands right now, you're going in. You've replaced. So you have Yaros, you have Maxime Lajoie, Shabbat DeMello. I mean, you could take that for what it is in terms of, the remaining defensemen that are on their core that they want to probably get. They feel like they want to get a little bit additional time to. I know they like Yaros a lot. I know that for a fact. So that
maybe this is an opportunity. Maybe this is an opportunity for like an Andreas England to move up from the AHL or something like that. I mean,
I'm thinking. You know who I'm thinking? I'm thinking maybe Bergman. They're gonna give a shot. He's been there for a little while now, and he's played in the NHL. That's who I'm thinking they're going to give a shot. He's not. Look, he's never going to be an offensive player, but he's a puck mover.
Right. All right. Well, let's start with our look at the playoff teams right now. I'll read you off where the playoff teams are in the East, and then we can just pick and choose what we want to talk about here. In the East right now, Tampa Bay is leading the Atlantic Division with 31 points. Toronto is 1 point behind. Buffalo is tied with the Leafs, surprisingly, with 30 points. Great streak, 7 games in a row by the Sabres. In the Metro, the Columbus Blue Jackets are tied with the New York Rangers at 26 points. Washington is at 25. The 2 wildcard teams are Boston at 26 and Montreal at 26. And then I'll just go here quickly. Carolina 23, Islanders 22, Detroit 22, Ottawa 21, Devils 20, Pittsburgh 20, Philadelphia 20, and Florida bringing up the bottom at 19. Now let's start with the Atlantic. I fully expected Tampa Bay to be where they are. I expect them to either be 1 or 2 in that division, even without Vasilevsky. They've stepped up even with Vasilevsky out with Louis Domingue in goal. They're just upping their offense and I'd say outscoring his. I mean, I'm not trying to be insulting, but I think he's a mediocre number 2 goaltender.
No, and we saw an example. Russ and I, we saw that perfect example of that last Saturday. So
right, and if he falters, maybe they go out and they add somebody as a stopgap because Vasilevsky's probably not expected to be back until after Christmas. Toronto I think has to be applauded for being as good as they've been without Matthews for now almost 4 weeks, without Nylander for the entire season so far. Buffalo, my God, I mean, it's just everything is falling into place. Carter Hutton is playing great. They're getting scoring out of Skinner, which poses a bit of a problem that we've talked about on a previous show. Let's start with the Atlantic. What do you guys think?
Don't gloss that over. Skinner caused huge problems for the Flyers. They had no answer for Jeff Skinner. Zero.
Right. I'm talking about contractual.
No, I know. But I'm just saying the matchup problems that he is causing around the league is a big reason why the Sabres have had their surge.
Yeah.
And I look at it again from Philadelphia's perspective in the terms of the fact that Skinner was there potentially for in a deal. Now, again, they made the decision to go with JVR, which I don't think was wrong, but he was there for the taking if they wanted to try to grab another forward in the circumstance, and I think he could have really helped. But yeah, Skinner certainly has fit in beautifully with Housley's system in terms of how he has moved himself onto scoring lines, and we've all known that Skinner's got offensive talent. He oozes offensive talent. It's just a matter of finding the right spot for him. But
let me pose this question because I think they're one of the teams that could conceivably be on the bubble here. Because I don't think many people thought that Buffalo was going to be a playoff team this year. I think they were going to be closer to contend based on some of the additions, but that they wouldn't be able to cross the Rubicon. In this case, Boston loses Bergeron for a month and Chara for a significant period, so they're injured, and everything is going right for Buffalo. The question is, do you think that they can keep one of the 3 spots in the Atlantic or one of the wild cards?
On the fence.
Okay.
I'm going to say, I feel like, though, when you get off to a good start, though, that it can, especially with a young team, that they start to believe in themselves. I mean, again, it is still early, 22 games into the season. But it is again, we are a quarter of the way through the season. You start to have that kind of belief, and when you have the level of talent that the Sabres have been building over several years now, they may be taking that, they may be taking that quantum leap forward this season, bigger than we may have anticipated. But you do have to keep, as you stated, the Bruins in mind here. They are dinged up. They are banged up in this circumstance. But I do think, if I'm looking at the rest of the division right now, I think in terms of a potential wild card spot, I think they can potentially have it. They and the Bruins may swap spots, but I still think, if I'm looking at the remaining divisions here, I think they have a very good chance of being in it right at the end. There may be a backdoor entry, but I think they have a chance of making it. Yeah.
Now, Russ, I fear the Boston Bruins. I think the Boston Bruins, even with they have good young players. Thing is, they've done this without McAvoy's been hurt for a while now, and Chara's been out for at least a couple weeks now. Bergeron is out. They're going to have to rely on Tuukka Rask to steal them games, or Halak to steal them games, because Halak has played better. This really tests the depth of the Bruins to be able to stick close, and then when they get everybody back, to maybe come in and either get 3rd place in the Atlantic or a wild card. They're the ones that I think Buffalo was sort of pitted against, because they're the ones most vulnerable.
Yeah, the Bruins just have to stay healthy. We knew they'd have injuries this year, but if you get to March and they're fairly healthy, they're going to make the playoffs. So I'm not really worried about the Bruins. I know there's always going to be this angst with the goaltending. I don't care about any of it. What I do care about is Luongo is back and Florida's still in the cellar. And now Luongo's save percentage is only a .902. You knew he'd have some hiccups. They're 6-4 in their last 10. I'm telling you, I would get Bob Bugner out of there. I'd put someone like Alain Vigneault in there. If you brought in someone like Alain Vigneault and you did it on a short-term basis, you would watch that team rocket through the standings. There's a problem with that team. They should be getting better defense out of that team and more offense, and they're not doing it. And we can't just say, well, it's all about Roberto Luongo, because Roberto Luongo's back and they're still struggling.
He's back. They won 5 in a row, and I think they lost their last 2. So, it's sort of you got infused with confidence once Luongo got back, and then maybe they're settling back. And now they lose Trocheck for probably most of the year, which, then, their strong point was up the middle. Now, I don't know if they're going to shift Bukestad to the middle or call up Borgstrom or.
Just think about this. The Rangers have more goals than the Panthers. Should that even be a thing? No. You go look at the amount of goal scoring potential on the Panthers, and
Mike Hoffman's got 17 straight games.
Right. So that's why I'm thinking it's a coaching thing. They need to do something. I still think they could do it. But you're asking me today. So today, I think the Sabres are a bubble team for today. But I do think the Panthers could have a run in them, but they really do need, I think, better coaching.
Okay, now let's shift to the Metro. I thought Columbus, as they're currently constructed, our team that we thought they were in the top 3 last year, thought they were going to be in the top 3 this year. It's a very tight race. I saw Columbus on Monday. They're playing the Leafs today or tonight in Columbus. I think Tortorella is doing a pretty decent job there. Bobrovsky had a slow start, but now is playing better. They got Seth Jones back, and they have a top line right now of Atkinson, Dubois, and Panarin that are really carrying the team offensively. But there's not much there after that line, which of course, when we get closer to the deadline and it's trade Panarin or keep Panarin and trade Bobrovsky or keep Bobrovsky, I got the feeling listening to Tortorella in the morning skate presser that of his mind, they're not trading these guys. They're keeping these guys in their run, and they're taking a run. But that's his point of view, and I don't know if that's Jarmo Kekalainen's point of view. The thing that surprises me here is the Rangers with 26. This is not part of the plan, Russ, and Washington sort of hovering around there, waiting to jump into first place with a couple wins in a row. Let's start with Columbus. What do you think?
Well, I mean, Boone Jenner, he should have more points. I told you if Milano actually got to play, he would have more points. But again, Tortorella has this weird way of doing things. It's amazing. Anthony Duclair, they just pick up off the scrap heap. He's like third on the team in goals. It's just.
But he's also drawn out of the lineup too at times. I mean, which means John's sort of keeping it tight. If he sees something with Duclair, he's not hesitating in terms of taking him out of the lineup.
They're only a +4 on differential. Like Torts needs to ease up a bit here and open it up a little bit. He really does, because I think he's constricting his offense a bit. But look, they're a good team. They're going to make the playoffs.
Now the Rangers. I mean, this is not part of the plan, Russ. I mean, this is
nobody really knows what the Rangers' plan is. I don't even know if they know what it is, Mike. But here's the thing. I told you the two things that you really couldn't control were David Quinn wanting to win and Henrik Lundqvist wanting to win. Right. And even though Lundqvist's save percentage has dipped a little bit lately, it's still a .919. He's probably a top 5 goalie today in the league. Now, last year, half season, he couldn't keep it up, and they just died. But I think they have a little bit more going for them this year. I still don't think they're going to hang in this race. They're on a 9-1 run, I think, right now.
Yeah,
this is the high point for them. They may still beat the Flyers, but I still think you'll see a gradual dip. I know it's not saying much. May, because it's the Flyers at home too. But you're still seeing a gradual dip here that, I think is going to change. I think the interesting thing in the Metro now, this is where the Flyers are at. The Rangers made sure they played Georgiev at home so they could have Lundqvist on the road against the Flyers. Like, that was an intentional matchup because they probably felt like, you know what? We could take 2 here if we do that. And
plus it being a national game and everything too. You want. Yeah,
I mean, generally, but they, probably in the old days, I mean, Quinn has played Lundqvist back-to-back this season, and they decided not to do that. And so,
and the Flyers and
where they're at right now. They're in a good spot.
And the Flyers will probably play Pickard after they started Lyon on Wednesday in Buffalo.
They'll probably play Pickard.
Lyon was a disaster. There's no
disaster. So as far as the Rangers go, here's the thing, though. Everybody wants to applaud Neil Pionk for his offense, and I'll do the same. He's not good defensively, but they're getting away with it right now because they do have a lot of puck movers. Anthony DeAngelo has played great for them, and actually that's been a real nice thing because the other day when David Quinn sat Brendan Smith, in his words, it's not my words, in his words, that was the first time a guy deserved to sit who didn't deserve to sit was sitting on the blue line all season. So, that's how deep they think it is. It's not that deep, but the emergence of DeAngelo is good, and that helps them. I mean, Cody McLeod scored a goal the other day. That's how you know things are just going right.
Now, Anthony, do you agree? Because I agree with Russ. I think Columbus and Washington are teams that'll stay in the top 3, and the Rangers will drop out. Do you agree with that assessment?
I would agree with that assessment. I think the Rangers are. I agree with Russ. I think there's definitely some underlying things with the Rangers where you can definitely say, some good things to see happen, but some of their top players as well, like say Zuccarello right now, he's got 10 points, but defensively he's struggling. Yeah. If you've watched him, Pionk again. Yeah, great point totals, but still, I know we don't like to talk about minuses, but again, when you're a -5, that tells me a lot of, that you're as much of a defensive concern as you are an offensive threat.
Sure.
Yeah, my belief is, the bubble will probably burst on the Rangers. It's just a matter of when that will happen. Whether that starts today against the Flyers team, as I stated, that's struggling, to borrow a Joe Namath phrase.
Joe Namathism.
There you go. You wanted your Red Jets reference for the show? You got it.
Yeah. Can we add a Richard Toddism?
Yeah, I agree.
That was your one shining moment in Buffalo, Mike.
Yes, Bill Simpson provided it. Thank you.
You want me to start talking about wide right and everything else? We can
go. I'm immune. Believe me, it's been thrown at me the last 25 friggin' years. No, okay. Now here's the question though, because I think we all agree the Rangers will probably drop out. Maybe they could hang on for a wild card, but I don't think so. But what team that's struggling right now can move up into the top 3 in the Metro? Because to my mind, all of them have major flaws.
This is what it looks like to me, the division.
Yeah, but
you want to know? I mean, it's pretty easy. The team is Pittsburgh. They just have to get their stuff together.
Well, wait a second. I mean, maybe you change your opinion on that because the announcement came out yesterday or late Wednesday. Matt Murray is out longer term.
It doesn't change my opinion.
Okay, so you think Casey DeSmith can? I mean, it's going to be.
I don't think Casey DeSmith. I think they'll probably
Jerry be the one.
Go back to Jerry. Yeah,
I think Jerry will start to get the lion's share, like Anthony said, and I think they'll even look to make a trade to get the backup going. Look, this is a tough year for Murray because his dad passed away. I don't think he was really mentally in it like he had been in the past. And now, again, with injuries. So I think they'll look to get a backup there. So I think it's Pittsburgh. The interesting thing, though, is I have to point out the Carolina situation because it also affects my fantasy team. And it's funny because I have Curtis McElhinney in the minors. He has 5 wins of their 8 wins this year. But I also just picked up Aaron Dell in the trade, and I'm thinking, am I really going to send down Aaron Dell for Curtis McElhinney? But this is how bad the Carolina Hurricanes are now.
He's their starter. He's their star. He's got the most victories. He's got 5 wins.
I know, but it's like today. Is it going to keep up? That's the thing.
Oh, I don't know if it's going to keep up. And and Anthony, I'll throw this one at you because I watched the game on Wednesday with the Leafs and the Hurricanes, obviously, and the Hurricanes pelted Frederik Andersen with 29 shots in the first period. Now, Carolina reminds me of those Leaf teams under Ron Wilson, where their mentality was throw the puck at the net and hope. They have more talent in terms of offensive players in that, but it's sort of people refer to, I guess, as area shooting, to shoot from anywhere. And, maybe you get a tip, maybe you get this, but I think it's a product of the fact that they don't have enough scoring. But their defense is fantastic. Great game. Falk is playing pretty well. Dougie Hamilton's Dougie Hamilton. They're so loaded on defense. And of course, I'm going in the Nylander direction here that, I think they can afford to trade a Slavin or a Pesce in a deal for a guy who could be a scorer for them. Yeah. As they're currently constituted, I don't know if they can make the playoffs with the offense that they have right now.
No, when Michael Ferland is your leading goal scorer with 11 goals, I mean, that's an impressive start for Ferland. Don't get me wrong, but
it's a contract here too.
And a contractor, exactly. And Aho's off to a great start, obviously. 24 points in 21 games. How much of that will hold with Aho? Is this a breakout year for him, or is this, a hot start and then potentially a recession to the norm? Yeah, they're a team that I would look at here in terms of they need that one extra forward, I think, to tie a scoring threat to tie everything together for them in there, offensively for them. It's just, you go to the rest of the lineup. They got 5 goals here. Stahl, Svechnikov in his first year, obviously.
Looked really good. Very
good. He's a threat. I'd love to see, again, I would love to see like Nylander and Svechnikov together. That would be I
think Nylander would play center for them. I think they would move him to the middle.
I agree with that.
Yeah, I think so. And that's where I think they need it, where they need the most amount of help.
With this goaltending. Scott Darling was supposed to be the guy. He's clearly never going to be the guy. Right. So then they bring in Peter Mrazek on a hope and a prayer. I know it sounds like greatest American hero. He's not. He's Czech, but whatever.
Believe it or not.
And he doesn't get the job done. So could Curtis McElhinney start the rest of the year? I don't know.
No.
No. So Mrazek's probably going to become their number one at some point. There's no way this team makes the playoffs.
I think Darling's got like a .903 save percentage, and Mrazek is under 900. So I think it's going to be a sort of a 1A, 1B between.
Okay, so they go with both of them. At the end of the day, though,
But they're carrying 3 goaltenders because they're afraid that somebody's going to claim one of them on waivers, which, because with, Tampa Bay or Pittsburgh might claim Mrazek if they try to send him down. We know the Leafs, they're not going to send down McElhinney, but we know the Leafs
trade McElhinney to the Leafs for Nylander. You never know if he keeps racking up wins.
There you go. But now the wild cards, we talked about Boston. We'll just talk about Montreal. I'm not sold. Okay, I know that they're getting better than expected performances out of Tatar. Domi has been phenomenal so far this year, and the other guys that they had there already, like Gallagher and Shaw, are doing their thing. Price has started to be more like Carey Price recently, because he had like a 900 save percentage up until like maybe a couple weeks ago, and now it's getting close that maybe in the next 2 to 3 weeks they get Weber back. I'm sorry. Right now, everything that's going right for the Habs, I don't expect it to go right for them throughout the year. Domi's going to come down to reality a little bit. Tatar is not going to be scoring at the pace that he's scoring. I think that there's not enough there, even with Weber coming back. But that's my thought. What do you think?
Yeah, Price has slowed down too. I think ultimately, Florida will take that spot. They have 3 games in hand on Montreal. I think that will come into play at some point, the same way that Pittsburgh has 2 games in hand on the Rangers. Like, this is, right now, some of these teams that we're talking about that are in the playoff hunt have played more games. That does matter. So we'll see what happens when that condenses. I'm sorry if I'm boring you, Mike, but we'll see what happens if that when that condenses. But I don't think Montreal will hang in there. But Montreal could be a bubble team. I mean, again, they have plenty of cap space, and the one thing we can't account for right now at the quarter pole is, will they make another deal to bolster their team? And I think they will. And they do have Claude Julien. So I think Montreal's going to hang around longer than the Rangers. I do.
Okay. I mean, do you see any of these teams that we haven't talked about? Islanders, Detroit, Ottawa, Devils, Philadelphia, Florida, any of them?
I think a lot of them are going to be in hover mode, especially the Islanders. I think they got off to a really good start, and I think they're now regressing to the mean, I think, to what they really are at this point. I mean,
the Devils are playing poor. I mean, that's really
I mean, the Devils have had difficulties this year.
Reason
last year's, after threatening at times last year, the Devils are still very much a work in progress. Zacha was actually
Zacha's played well since he's come back.
It looks like the AHL did. He went there and played well, and it was
a wake up call
that he needed.
Yeah, it was definitely a wake up call, and they got
don't have enough scoring. Like, we all talked about Shiro not doing enough in the offseason because Shiro felt like he had enough guys that were going to step up. They don't, and I think ultimately that sort of does him in. Here's the thing.
No, as I say, it smacks to me that Shiro is on a budget, because I think they have like $15 million in cap space, and it's like, I mean, that team they should have added. And if they added something, I think they'd be closer to or in the playoff race.
If they could put cap space into the Sixers, they would have gotten another player besides Jimmy Butler. Josh Harris would do it. And you can laugh, but you know that he would do it. But I will say this also. As far as the Flyers go, when the coaching change is made, when JVR gets assimilated, when they figure out the defense, they'll certainly make a rush to be a bubble team. I don't know if they'll get over the hump because of what's going on, but I think they'll be right in the hunt, and so they could be, right in there too.
Hold on. You said when they make the coaching change. So
they're making it.
Are we talking about up top? Are we talking about the man, the guy in charge? Or are we talking about
coaching? The man behind the bench.
Hackstall.
Yeah, Hackstall, and I think one of the other coaches like LePerrier will go. And I think this weekend, if things don't, I definitely think potentially because I mean, we saw the comment from Giroux after the Sabres game.
Yeah, that was
big 2 games coming up.
That was an embarrassing first period.
Honestly, Michael, that was as bad as I've seen. We had some ugly games. That's the other thing too that comes down to the fact they've had a ton of ugly games this year where they've gotten their doors blown off them. Yeah. This was as bad as I thought, as bad as the San Jose home opener.
Just think about this. this game is always billed as like the post-Thanksgiving turkey game, whatever. If the Flyers were to have a bad outing here on national TV, just think about what the headlines will be like.
Well, they don't have the benefit. Here's the thing: they don't have the benefit after that game. They don't have the benefit of being able to use that as an excuse at this point.
No, they don't. But that's what I'm saying. But I'm saying they'll get destroyed in the media, and the coverage that's going to come out of this nationally might put enough heat on them to finally make a move if it happens. Because the one thing I'll tell you about the Rangers is they'll come out hard in that first period because they have a lot of young legs. Mm-hmm. The Flyers can't have another sleepy first period. Their first period, they're probably the worst first period team in hockey.
Yeah, they've been absolutely terrible this year in terms of it, and that's one of their biggest issues because then they got to expend so much energy just to get themselves back into games.
Right,
they just don't have anything left at the very end, and that's the problem. But it's a recurring issue with them for years now, Russ. In terms of them, just it's a lot of hustle late in the game. So they're like the ultimate moral victory team sometimes.
Yeah.
We squeezed the point out of it. It was great effort.
We played hard in the second and the third. Where
we get this, and it's like this is the same pattern. That was okay. When some of the younger players were developing,
right?
You could potentially take on that at this point. Got too many of those young players now who are now veterans. I'm sorry, you have a Shane Gostisbehere, Ivan Provorov, who has been really. If you're going to point to anybody right now who's really had a shocking difficulty this year, and I'm convinced some form or another he's got some kind of a physical ailment of some kind. There's just when the puck that normally explodes off his stick on either if he's laying it in or on a pass just completely sort of rolls off it. I'm wondering if there is an upper body injury that we don't know about in this circumstance,
or is he just overused
up top here?
I will tell you this: I watched him a few days ago, the last game. And his passes had a lot on him. But what you're telling me you noticed the other day maybe sounds like overuse.
It's possible. It's entirely possible. Again, I'm not sure. And in this circumstance, I can't say for sure of anything. But
when they're using him,
noticeable. His gaffes are noticeable. So we may say it's a little more mental than it is physical. But then what is it exactly mentally that's causing him, these lapses in these plays that he didn't make? I mean, he would make them here and there, but then recover from them. And this year, it's been compounding.
Early in the season, when they're using him 25 minutes a night, it's just too much for a young defenseman. But let's move on to the West here because now we don't have to waste a lot of time on the Central because I think the top three teams in the Central are going to be the top three teams unless anyone has an argument here. Nashville is leading the division with 33 points. Minnesota is 28 points in second place. Winnipeg is 2 games in hand on them. They're 26 points.
And they're tied, yeah.
Right. You've got it
looks like Minnesota might get another 100-point season, huh, Mike? Another boring 100-point season.
That's a far ways away, Russ, from making the Stanley Cup final. The 2 wild cards are from the Central as well. Colorado with 26. Dallas with 24. The Pacific is, I think, where we'll focus. The Pacific and the wild cards is where we'll focus. Right now, Calgary at 27, San Jose at 26, Anaheim at 23, with a 500 record.
Yeah,
9-9-5. And then you go down for the other teams outside of the playoffs right now. Vancouver 22, Edmonton 21, Chicago 21, Vegas 21, Arizona 20, St. Louis 17. And LA Kings 15. Okay, so let's just quickly go through the Central here. Does anybody believe that any of those 3 teams are going to drop out of the top 3, or do you think maybe like a Colorado or Dallas can move up?
I think the Avs they've had a great start, the Avs, and again, I mean they have given up 62 goals, but again, their offense is compensated. When you're a plus 16. I'm and I've seen them play this year a good bit, quite a few times this year. They look like they're for real. They look like whatever the system it is that Jared Bednar has been installing there is really clicking now. And I think they're at the minimum a wild card team this year.
Russ, the system is put my best 3 players together and let the other team sweat their what's off because you can't stop them. Rantanen, Landeskog, and McKinnon.
They get a lot of push from the blue line 2-point-wise, and that makes up for it. And that's something like what Peter Laviolette usually does with his teams, and so it does work for them. Yeah, I think the Avs could move up. I'm going to tell you, Peter's not on the broadcast. I can see Winnipeg moving down to just being a struggling to be a wild card team because their defense is bad. The way they're playing right now, it shouldn't be this bad. But I've seen moments where I don't like what I'm seeing out of that team defensively, and
so it's not the blue line; it's team defense.
It's team defense, and they're 4-4 in their last. They're 4-4 on away. They're 6-3-1 in their last 10. I don't know. Have you guys liked the way the Winnipeg's playing lately? I don't.
I expected more, but I think they're still playing good. I mean,
I mean, they're going to be a playoff team, but
yeah.
I think that they can make some adjustments and bring things together. It could very well be, again, great team last year, later than expected playoff run that we saw out of them. They're still sort of kind of dealing with that potentially. But I think they'll get it. My gut is they'll get it together.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, Ehlers has not played great. Line has been spotty. Maybe he's
popping goals, but that's pretty much it. I mean, I shouldn't say that 13 goals is nothing to sniff at, obviously. But
no, but before they went on that trip to Finland, I mean, there were games where like he was completely out of it, and the commentators in the games were like, we don't know what he's doing out there, and then the natural talent just rises to the surface, and he scores 2 goals in that one game in Helsinki. So
we do need to point out the biggest anomaly in hockey is the Anaheim Ducks, because they have 52 goals for, 68 against. They're a -16 differential. They're in the playoff hunt. This is why. John Gibson's got a 927. Ryan Miller's got a 924. Their goaltending tandem is the best in hockey. It is literally keeping them afloat.
Yeah, I mean, well, I saw them play. I saw them play last week, and it was a 1-1 tie going to overtime, and it was the third game in 4 nights for Toronto, and they really couldn't generate any kind of offensive push against the Ducks. But I think it was mostly because they were at the end of the California trip, and Anaheim, they had over 30 shots on Garrett Sparks, but I didn't remember many really golden scoring chances. So goal scoring is a problem. We know that Getzlaf and Kessler have slowed down. I would have thought that would be a team that would be interested in a Nylander swap, because they need an infusion of offense, and their defense is good, but they just allow so many shots.
They do, but the goalies are stopping them, but they just don't produce any offense. But I'm telling you, this is one case. It's hard to find in this era of hockey where the goalie standing on the head really, does it for a team, but it's doing it for them.
Well, Anthony, I'm waiting for San Jose to truly wake up, because once they do, I think they blow away this division, because they're the strongest in all 3 facets: forwards, defense, and goaltending. To me, it's surprising that Calgary, with their goaltending concerns, is in first place. I mean, right now it seems like Riddick is the goalie that he's taken over from Mike Smith, and I just don't know if he's a number 1. I mean, that's the guy they're going to go with, and if he's playing well, but
their lines have been so good offensively that it hasn't mattered, and so it might be okay.
But as the season goes on, the offense only carries for so long. Once that dries up in certain circumstances, you got to have competent goaltending. And again, as of right now, Riddick is definitely, no question right now. He's had a pretty good start to the season. I think 11 games in, his goals against is hovering around right just above 2. So yeah, I mean, he seems to be their guy right now. Offensively, Matt Tkachuk is just off to an incredible start for the year, 27 points in 22 games.
Yeah,
that's what's helped them carry them. But I agree, Mike. I think San Jose, overall talent level wise, I think is better than Calgary. Certainly, I think man for man, and it's just a matter of them kind of getting everything together. And getting things. I do think it's been interesting in terms of, I think they're still in the process of trying to graft Carlson on the blue line. I still think there's that. And the thing what everybody's got to take in mind is, as great a player as Erik Karlsson has been, he's the same defenseman he was a few years ago. The answer is not in his own end.
Right.
And that's the one thing.
He's starting to pick it up, man. I've noticed.
He's starting to. And I think as he's becoming more comfortable and understanding his fellow defensemen and the forwards and the system that DeBoer plays versus what he had in Ottawa, I think it'll come along certainly for him.
I know this is something that Russ scoffed at. And I just have to bring it up, though. Is like there have been more than a few people that have said that Carlson is maybe just now starting to play like he did before the ankle injury, and that that was a concern for some teams that were possibly making trades for him, is that they weren't 100% sure he was 100%.
I still scoff at it. I think it's what Anthony said, and I watched him the other day, and he is just starting to fit in. We knew it would take a little while. It's taken longer than we thought, but he is starting to fit in. We got to give Joe Thornton his credit, right? Because I think he tied Lemieux for assists all time. And I got to tell you, Joe Thornton has been a great surprise in the sense that he has looked as good as he has, knowing he's literally on his last knees like Steve Yzerman was, back in the day. Thornton's looked great. And, they're gutting it out. Now, here's the thing. Vegas, they've gotten Nate Schmidt back.
Mm-hmm.
He's played 3 games. He's got no points. They're still 5-5. Fleury's not as sharp as he was last year.
Yeah.
I thought Vegas could be a wild card team. I am now questioning that. I know I'm on the edge of that.
Well, I mean, right now the Central has 5 teams. I don't think that changes. I think the only team that's in danger of maybe dropping out is if another team gets hot and maybe catches Dallas, because I think Dallas is probably the number 5 in that division. But I think Dallas with Sagan and Ben and with Bishop, they're gonna miss Klingberg for about a month, and that's gonna be tough.
Montgomery's done a good job. I actually have watched them play, and I feel like, look, again, this is why everybody thinks that Hitch could be the magic pill in Edmonton. This Dallas team plays so much better than they played under Ken Hitchcock with Montgomery.
Yeah. And this is what I'm getting. It's like in the Pacific right now, the only one of the 3 that are in a top 3 spot that I'm convinced will be in a top 3 spot will be San Jose. I don't know about Calgary. I mean, I know that they're scoring well. I'm just questioning the goaltending. And Anaheim, I don't know how they're there. But the question is who replaces them. And if you look, I mean, Vancouver is 22 points, and I don't expect them to be in the race, although, Pettersson and Besser and the talent that they have, anything's possible. And the door is open for Edmonton, but I just don't know whether whether Hitchcock can get that situation straightened out.
I don't think so. I think there'll be moments where they are in it, and I think they will ultimately fall out of it unless Peter Chiarelli can pull a rabbit out of his hat and get them a top-notch defenseman. Because I think at the end of the day, Hitch is just going to shuffle everybody around on offense and play the McDavid line to death. They could bring up Yamamoto and Puljujarvi, and maybe they will at some point. But, again, the problem with me that I have with this organization bringing in Ken Hitchcock is it pushes player development back another year. If Ken Hitchcock stays on another year, then it pushes it back another 2 years. And so, then you're really going to have Puljujarvi and Yamamoto over-marinating in Bakersfield, which might be okay, but it doesn't really help the guys that are there develop. And that's the problem is, they traded for Ryan Spooner, and the way they used to play benefited them in the trade to have Spooner, but now Spooner plays a lot like Patrick Sharp did as a young player, and his ice time is already starting to get cut. And I think Hitch will cut out Ryan Spooner altogether at some point.
Yeah, Spooner's not a heavy player, but neither was Ryan Strome. So and we know
Strome's better defensively, even though he's not a heavy player. He is. He always has been.
Now, if you say that Vancouver is not ready for prime time, which I am, and the Edmonton is a tire fire, which I believe.
Can I say one other thing because it just hit me?
Yeah.
And I think Peter Chiarelli, when he made that deal, had no idea Ken Hitchcock was coming in. If you ask me who hired Ken Hitchcock, I think it was the owner.
I think it was Bob Nicholson.
No, I was going to say Nicholson probably because there's a relationship there. I think Gates certainly had no problem signing off on the move. Yeah, sure, but I think Nicholson probably recommended it.
And I'm sure Hitchcock was on board. He's an Edmonton native. Apparently, It's always been a dream.
There's buy-in there for him. There's major buy-in for him. That's probably one of the only circumstances where I think he would have, after Dallas, that he was one of those places where he was going to jump at the chance to do it.
Now, the question I was going to basically say is that Vancouver is not ready for prime time, which I don't think they are, and Edmonton remains a tire fire and inconsistent. Then the only 2 options here to move up into the Pacific are Vegas and Arizona.
tighten it up. I mean, they are just, compared to last year, they are as loose as goose in their own end. They really are from the games I've watched.
But Fleury is still playing good. He's not playing at like a 930.
I mean, we saw last year in the final how Vegas, their defense could be exposed, and I do think there's a bit of a carryover effect. Plus, you're trying to graft on some new players as well. You didn't have the expectations last year that they now have on them, and I think that's wearing on some of their players.
Yeah.
Offensively got good numbers, but you go through the rest of the lineup. Shea Theodore struggling defensively, certainly. Yeah. That blue line is an issue. There's
Pacioretty is not playing well.
No, 6 goals, but again, not good in his own end. I mean, right now, I don't think Montreal is necessarily hurting in this circumstance from that end, from the aspect.
No, he's picked it up as of late too. He really got off to an awful start, Pacioretty, but he's played better lately. So I'm kind of thinking he'll kick in, but.
And Paul Stastny's been out for about a month. I think he'll be back.
That's huge for them because, again, that was another big issue we saw with them last year was their center depth, and that goes to team defense too.
Yeah,
that the stronger your spine down the middle, the better you are defensively. And losing Stastny, who is a good two-way center,
about a week away. Stastny, a week or 2 away is what I hear.
He's been a bigger loss for them than I think maybe. We knew it was a big loss, but to me, it's definitely shown.
So that could be a shot in the arm for them.
Yeah, and the team, and the thing is like, we got to remember, Edmonton is 2 points behind Anaheim. Vancouver's 1 point behind Anaheim. Vegas is 2 points behind Anaheim, and Arizona is 3.
Yeah, it's the same thing. It's just like in many ways the Pacific's just like the Metro, and the fact it's another accordion effect where somebody could jump up.
Yeah,
very quickly.
We do need to be fair to Anaheim too. Losing Cam Fowler the way they did,
it's huge.
That's a big thing too, and they're holding on without Cam Fowler. Like they do deserve props for that,
right? And if all of a sudden, and we've seen Getzlaf slump badly in first halves of the season, and he was to me he was barely noticeable in the game that I saw last week. If he steps up in the second half like he normally does, then you've got yourself a number 1 center again, and Kessler. As you get closer to the playoffs, they may start to improve. The thing is that Carlisle's name has sort of been circulated out there as either him or Hackstall as being the next one on a chopping block for coaches. So
I think Carlisle's going to hang on there a bit now. I think the goaltending is going to save him for a while, but if you do look at things, it's interesting because. Fowler did have that facial surgery, but he can come back with a cage a little sooner if he just goes with that. And so if Anaheim gets him back, they might be able to just keep the rest at bay, but they'll be playing ridiculously close games all year unless they do make a deal, which they could make that Nylander deal. I mean, they do have enough to do it, and they may be forced into a position where, they have to do it.
Okay, we'll finish off on this, and this won't take long, but I have to bring this up because it just.
Did I set the timer?
What's that?
Did I set the timer?
No, I did. I wanted
the Leafs timer. You don't want to set the Leafs timer.
Well, that's where I'm going, but sure. But Mike Babcock came out yesterday and made a statement that just made Twitter a buzz. And I'll read it from Chris Johnston. I'll read the quote accurately here. Obviously ecstatic about how the Leafs are playing as of Thanksgiving. Any way you look at it, we've got off to a good start. We think our team's going to be better, and we have significant pieces not here, and they will be here. So, of course, that when he said pieces, because the one piece is Austin Matthews, obviously, who's going to be back probably in a week to 2 weeks. Does that second piece, the plural of piece being pieces, mean William Nylander or what they get in a deal for William Nylander? That's where the debate, most people assumed that meant, he's being hopeful that they get Nylander under contract before December the 1st. And that's, I would say, right now, I think it's about 50-50 trade-wise. Trade or sign. But it all depends, and this is where I want to get your opinion. It all depends on whether you think the Nylander camp will capitulate, because the only way that they sign him to a contract is if Nylander agrees to a bridge deal, which is not a Panarin $6 million deal, probably like 5.25 for 2 or 3 years, or a long-term deal based on what the Leafs are willing to offer, which is around Pasternak money. They're not signing him for anything. If he's expecting $7.5 million, it's not happening.
No. And I think that's been a big log jam in this whole thing with Nylander, is the teams that are out there that are interested in him not willing to pay that $8 million that he's asking for. And you're right, they may not even be willing to pay 7.5. It may be like a 7.25, and he may have to accept that on a bridge basis and then see where he's at in 2 or 3 years after he gets dealt. I really would be shocked, and I will. I'll legitimately be shocked if the Leafs just sit on him, because I think it's a worse situation for them if they sit on him, because even though some people feel like he may have more value going into the draft, my feeling is he won't have played in a year. And even though he's a young player, the doubt that goes into GM's minds when you haven't seen a player – now, unless he goes to the KHL and lights it up, I can't see his value going any higher than it would be right now.
Anthony?
Yeah, I would concur with Russell on that. I think at this point now – I know I got a little bit of a chuckle. Everybody saw the Mark Savard tweet yesterday, right, with his sources?
Yeah.
Sources that he'll settle for no less than a certain number that everybody thought was a very nice number. I think we know what that was.
Yeah.
So everybody got, oh, is this for real? Is this? And I was like, read the tweet, guys. Savard's having fun with everybody.
Yeah.
My gut is I think they're going to figure this. I don't know why. I vacillate week to week on Nylander. Think he's going to get dealt or if he's going to get signed. My gut is leaning more towards I think he's going to get signed. I don't think that I don't know necessarily the trade that they want is there. And yeah, Mike.
I think there's an acceptable trade there.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that Dubas has to hit a grand slam home run now, but he can't make a Taylor Hall, Adam Larson.
That's the concern. To me, that's what it is. And I like everybody's been pointing to Carolina and Pesci or DeFalk or somebody like that.
I mean, yeah, I know, Russ. After the way their defense played against Carolina, I think most people realize they may win a round or two. They're not going to win a Stanley Cup with the defense that they have right now. They cannot play Ron Hainsey 25 minutes.
Right.
There's a lot of holes there. If they can get themselves a top 4 blue liner that they can retain for a number of years in a deal from Nylander, I think that works for them. But I just go back. I don't know whether it's going to be sign or trade, but I know that if Nylander's camp does not compromise, does not come down in I think to this point ridiculous demand for salary.
Yeah.
Based on he's had 2 60-point years. He's a good player. Don't get me wrong. He's not a superstar, and they're in a position where they're going to have to pay Marner and Matthews next year. They simply cannot pay Nylander what he wants.
What's funny? The deal with Carolina would have been done already if Tom Dundon wasn't like a budget guy, but he's a budget guy. So he's not going to pay Nylander top dollar. He's just not going to. He wouldn't pay Jeff Skinner top dollar. He's not going to pay William Nylander top dollar.
I think I see. The funny thing is, if he gets traded to Carolina, I think Carolina is probably willing to sign him to the bridge, but pay him $6 million like the Leafs wouldn't.
No, I agree, but I don't think Nylander will accept $6 million. I think he wants more
on a bridge.
On a bridge.
Then he's insane. Then
of course he's insane, Mike. We're not talking about something that's sane here, but I do think they would want more than 6 on a bridge, and I think that's where Dundon probably stops. He doesn't want to pay 7.
It's Black Friday, and Dundon wants a deal.
I'm just going to mention this, and we're going to talk about this on Monday, that the potential hiccup in the next CBA, if they decide to, because next summer they have the option of opting out, that what the owners are, the hill that they will die on is a second contract after ELC. That with guys like McDavid and Matthews going to $12 million and a lot of players holding out with RFAs and things of this nature, that they're going to look for some sort of cost certainty on a second deal. Who knows, 2-3 years. I think the PA will go to town on that, and I think
it'll go over like a lead balloon.
Yeah, I know, but based on the way it's going here, Rantanen, Connor, Line, Matthews, Marner. I mean, all these guys, and some of them are not 100% proven, and you're paying them $10-12 million a year. That goes against what the owners want.
Gambling money to burn, Mike. The last thing I want to say is, again, still the most underreported story in Toronto is the impending UFA for Jake Gardiner, because everybody just assumes he's either gone, or the other half assumes that he'll just walk in and take a sweetheart deal. But, JVR didn't do that. And the biggest problem that the Leafs are going to have is they'll figure out in a week what's going on with Nylander, but they really can't afford, even though certain people don't like Jake Gardiner, not only on this panel, but just in the world, they can't afford to lose him at this point. They really can't.
Well, in my mind, Russ, he's an own rental. They simply, if they're having these problems with Nylander and they're debating about
let's just say we don't know who they're going to pick up in this Nylander deal, but let's say for argument's sake they pick up nobody and Nylander sits. What's the defense going to look like next year? Who are you going to sign in the UFA market or trade for at the draft that's going to desperately change your defense?
I think what they're going to end up doing is what they have done over the last few years and try to promote internally. I think they're going to move Travis Dermott into the top 4, and they're going to and they're probably going to promote Timothy Liljegren and maybe even Rasmus Sandin. That they're going to go with a young defense and hope the offense.
So let's say they do go with the young defense, which I'm not against. They're still going to suffer from a young defense.
I agree.
We've seen other teams do it. And so I'm not sure. Like, I hope Babcock realizes if they lose Jake Gardiner and they don't get enough for Nylander, that is probably 3 years now until they really seriously try and make a cup run. It's gonna push them back that much.
That's why I think they're gonna push to make a cup run this year. And that's when they have the cap room that they have. They have $12 million in cap room without Nylander signed, and they'll have a ton of money at the deadline to sign or to trade. I think they're going to add 2 or 3 rentals because this is a chance to really go after it. But we'll talk about that on Monday. Great show, guys. For Anthony Mangione, for Russ Cohen, I'm Michael Agello. Thank you for watching, and remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey.